First and foremost, this is in no way or form to harass Manning. All information is of public record and fair use rules apply. Whenever someone unexpectedly drops dead at 37, questions should arise, especially whenever such said person has in any way been affiliated with the Department of the FBI or NSA or CIA. With that being said, Adrian Lomo, dead at age 37, was connected to Bradley Manning, who's now known as Chelsea Manning. Why is this relevant? Because Manning has a political platform and is attempting to expand it as a Baltimore Senator. I will play a clip to accompany the slideshow I'm presenting, which illustrates the fragile mental state which Manning is truly in. If I were in the San Fran area, I would attend this just to hear what Manning says. Not that I need to. I've pretty much concluded that while I agree with some of the things that Manning has to say, it's obvious to me that Manning has been a victim of mind control and is being used as a mouthpiece to stir up controversy and create division. In light of Manning running for public office, people should observe and be informed of his psychological and political stance. Please note, I do not have anything personal against Manning, and I don't hate Manning. I disavow those who would harass Manning for what is clearly a compromised mental health state, which I believe is second to something likened to MKUltra mental programming. It is in my belief that on October 16, 2016, there was a signal that Julian Assange was compromised. Since then, everything we've seen stemming from WikiLeaks has been orchestrated. I'll post a part 2 in a separate video to illustrate this. This audio, which you're about to hear that accompanies the slideshow, is from an interview conducted with Manning this month. Links are provided in the description box to referenced info.
Good morning. Please welcome to the stage Sally Singer and Chelsea Manning.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for coming out.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Yeah, I barely made it. I was out last night, so.
Well, you've had a better morning than Rex Tillerson thus far today.
Yeah. No kidding.
I should tell everyone that there's going to be questions. We're going to take questions near the end of the hour, and you have to do them on Slido.com, and then they appear before us, and we can answer them as we go along today. So, Chelsea.
Good morning.
Good morning. Good to see you here in Austin. We first met a year ago, about a year ago, when you were released, and I think the first thing I just wanted to ask is, how's your year been?
Very busy. It's been kind of chaotic. Honestly, it's been kind of chaotic. So I've been, I've been I was just on the West Coast, then I'm on the East Coast, then so I've been traveling a lot. I've been talking to a lot of people. Obviously, I have been, I've been writing a book as well. So that's been a long process behind the scenes. There's a documentary filming. So yeah, it's been very.
And your documentary is coming out this year?
We're working on it. So the question is like, when does it end? And it's been hard to find that because, my life has just started. So like, it's really a beginning. And so like, at what point we stop the.
Do you see the documentary is going through your campaign? And just for the record, this isn't a campaign appearance for Chelsea. I asked Chelsea before she actually announced her candidacy. So I just have to make that clear from the start. But is it going to document your?
No, probably not. It's more about like me and my adjustment and like the difficulties that I've had, because I've really had a lot of trouble. I thought I was going to get out of prison and be free and be, living like almost like a happy ending. But it's actually been more of a struggle than I thought it would be. And I'm really, now that it's been almost a year, I'm starting to really understand just how difficult it has been for me to settle down, because I mean, I still get nightmares. I still have moments where and you know, it was like living in my apartment. This is the first time I've like lived alone in a very long time, and it's been very hard for me because, you know, at 1 o'clock in the morning, I'll like want to beat on the wall and be like, hey, you know, like how are you doing? But you know, like that's not a normal thing. You don't beat on the wall of your apartment and say, hey, how's it going? What are you up to? So like I'm dealing with a lot of like loneliness and struggling to adjust to life. And there's a lot of like life things that, you know, whether it's just making breakfast in the morning, you know, like that was something that was normal and became a routine, but like adjusting into that and being able to take care of myself in these ways, whenever everything's like provided for you by the prison and is regimented for you, has been it's been hard.
How has that adjustment, which would be hard for anyone, been complicated by your fame? Because you didn't just emerge from prison. You emerged from prison super famous and symbolic to a lot of people for all sorts of reasons, you know, that you can and cannot control. So how has that been?
Wow, that's a great question. I haven't really thought about it like that, you know. I haven't adjusted to it either. I keep trying to act like people don't know who I am. Like I'll walk to the store, like I'll like walk to the CVS on a Saturday morning, and people recognize me, but like I'm not dealing with. I'm trying to live the life that I want, that I was trying to live before, even though I can't. Like I know that that's not possible, but I keep trying, and it's hard because my instincts are, I haven't really changed. You know, I'm still this like street kid that was like, because I lived homeless in 2006, and I lived for you know, like a year with my aunt in that part of Maryland, like full time, working 2 jobs, going to college, and I'm still trying to live that life that I was living before, but it's not possible, and I need to I'm recognizing more that I can't get my 20s back. I can't I can't live the 20s that I missed. I have to like move on, and that's tough. It's tough for me to move on from.
And it's also, I guess, complicated. I mean, the life you lived before, how much do you think gender plays? I mean, you're living life as a woman. You're a woman, and women have it is different to walk the street as a woman than a man. I mean, there's the vulnerabilities. Yeah.
Oh, I don't know. I haven't really. You know, it's been nice to, you know, be you know, like, because I finally came out and I'm finally who I am. It's really nice to not be self-conscious about who I am, and like, because like there was always this beforehand. There was always this like internal questioning inside my brain where it's like, what am I, you know, like, am I being masculine enough? Am I being man enough? Am I meeting people's expectations? And there's none of that anymore. So like, I'm living more myself, but the struggles have been different. So things are better, but they're also different, and I like have to deal with them in a different way.
And different, how so?
Different in that I've never lived, you know, I never lived life really as an adult.
Right.
To begin with, like I know prison really well. Like I know prison dynamics, and I know how to like live with other prisoners, which is a different social dynamic.
It is an adult dynamic, but it's a different dynamic.
I mean, it's a high school dynamic, really. Okay. It's like, I mean, prison is like high school, except you don't get to leave. So it's the same social dynamic. So I mean, like it was just an extension of my teenage years in a sense, in that you know, gossip and hierarchy and who gets to sit where kind of way. Mm-hmm. And that's not really a thing out here, which is good. But it's also that's what I've known.
Right. But you've chosen you moved back to Maryland, and you've chosen to get, you know, an apartment and live on your own and live in that way.
Yeah.
And a very
it's been tough trying to find a roommate, though. I will say that.
Okay.
I mean, rent's not cheap. So, yeah. I do want to. I'm really tired of living alone. I'm not used to it. I feel I get lonely, especially at night. And some of like the like darkest and like, you know, loneliest moments that I've had have been at like 1 o'clock in the morning, where I'm just like, I'm in this big apartment and it's all to myself, and I want to have somebody else be here, you know, a roommate, you know, a neighbor or something, you know. It's very, you know, because I've always been around people, you know, for like 7 years, except for, you know, like I spent a year in solitary confinement where I was separated from everyone, which made me appreciate being around people more. And whenever I'm alone in my own apartment, I start to have memories from that solitary confinement period, and I'm struggling with that. You know, I don't like being alone in my apartment in the middle of the night. I don't. It's scary at times.
You should know that I think that feeling is shared by many, many people who've not even gone through one moment of your life. I think that,
oh, really?
That's very... I mean, who
people haven't told me this.
Hello, stuff. Earth. Like, how many of you like to live alone in the middle of the night?
Yeah.
But you did want to move back to Maryland because you are, you know, running for the Democratic candidacy for Senate there.
Yeah.
Which
I'm not here for that event. So
no, we're not talking about that.
We can't talk about.
But you needed to. You are living in Maryland. You're not living in like. You didn't situate yourself back in like the middle of Greenwich Village or in an area where.
Well, I thought about it.
You did. I know you were in New York, but you wanted to get back to Maryland.
Yeah, I did. Maryland is home for me.
Right.
It's where I'm from. So I wanted to go back. It was familiar to me. I lived there before. I actually live like 3/4 of a mile from my aunt's house. So, right. You know, I didn't, you know, like I wanted to be home, and in a sense, I have found, you know, my place and my home. There is just, you know, like there's something missing, and it feels incomplete. And also like this, like the times that we live in, you know, I walked out of prison and I thought like, oh yes, like I'm going to be living my life now. But I mean, the first few weeks, I'm like, wow, things are really messed up, and we need to I can't sit down and wait. I need to do stuff, and so I've been sort of pulling myself in more and more into the activism of like the movement against, you know, like just there's like a lot of activism that I do, and it's really hard, you know, like as a trans person and as a public figure to like balance this, like I need to like settle down and get out of prison, along with the fact that I'm trying to ensure that, you know, the people that I care about, my friends and my family, and also I haven't forgotten about the people in prison. You know, there are people in prison all across the country, and I can't leave them behind. And that sense of solidarity that I have with prisoners in all these different circumstances, whether it's prisoners in federal prison or state prison or county jail or ICE detainees. You know, I have nothing but like strength, or I want to give them nothing but strength and solidarity, because like I live that, and that's such a part of my life now, and such a part of my identity, that I can't bring myself to let that pass.
Well, it's true that you emerged into a moment in our history, of this democracy, which, you know,
that's
slightly the ninth circle of hell. You know,
that word has taken on some deeper meaning lately.
Right. I mean, what was that like? I mean, you get out of prison and suddenly you're cast into the Trump administration, which has been
It was everything that I feared. You know, I've been doing, you know, I've been doing activism for 8-9 years now, and I was afraid that this would happen. I mean, I was just like, and I didn't, because I was in prison and I was in my own like world fighting, you know, to get out, even though I knew that things were happening outside of it. Now that I'm out here, I'm realizing, oh wow, like we really have, you know, like the militarization of police, the styles of policing and of like the rhetoric in politics, everything's changed. It's become so much darker and so much scarier. And really, this has been an ongoing process. Like this has been decades in the making. You know, this didn't come out. You know, this didn't and it's not an aberration. Like the sort of political rhetoric and the style of governance that we're seeing is not an aberration. It's the conclusion of the systems that we've been built. You know, I've been calling it the whirling death machine, where we've been building this military-industrial complex, this prison-industrial complex, this these massive systems of controlling people, and it's for good reasons. It's always for a good rational governments, and it's arbitrated by by people that are professional and make good decisions, and now computer systems that are unbiased, and it's total BS.
What do you think the tipping point has been? If you can.
I mean, I know that the tipping point for me was definitely being in Iraq, because I saw the tools that we were using in an occupied country and realized that we're stifling political dissent. We're looking the other way at ethnic cleansing. We kind of viewed it as like, oh, they're killing themselves, so it's not our problem. And we also viewed the population as like the enemy, and like us as like, we were like looking out for ourselves. Like that was the reality. Like sure, we had different mission statements, but that was the reality. And I see this mindset has like on the streets of American cities today, like where police are now viewing their entire neighborhoods as criminals, as the enemy of sorts. So this mentality and the tools that are used, like the algorithms that I worked on in Iraq have found their way in policing, and also like in the way the corporate world works, whether it's your credit report or advertising data, all these different tools that we saw being used in one context have found their way everywhere else.
And could you break that down a little bit? So this is part of a larger argument you have about the threat of algorithmic learning or artificial intelligence,
right?
To not just a democratic society, but society in general. I mean, could you explain from the kinds of algorithms you worked on in Iraq and how you saw those into practice to now? Because it's the incremental learning that allows the feedback loop to happen, right?
Right. So the idea of using algorithms in government and in making life decisions about like credit reporting, for instance, is that it's better. Like if we just write a better algorithm, a more accurate algorithm, if I just math the crap out of this problem.
Math the crap out of it.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, I usually use the S word, but there you go. But like if I just math it really well, I can problem solve. And I came into Iraq with that mindset, as somebody who uses, we called it predictive analysis, like with statistics, but it's really it's really what now is the buzzword is artificial intelligence. What wasn't really called that back then, but like artificial intelligence is more of like a sci-fi concept. It felt like, but now that it's sort of coming into fruition as this buzzword, that's what we were working on, and it's these systems aren't unbiased, and they don't defer. Like we can pick and. I noticed that we picked and choose. We would pick and choose the data that we would believe and the data that we wouldn't believe.
In Iraq, when you were doing this.
So like I would be like, look, if we do, because it doesn't just predict. Like statistical. Like humans are actually incredibly predictable. We're just a simple mathematical prediction, whenever you like map out all of our movements, all of our activities, whether it's cell phone data or locations or our purchase history, we're very predictable, and also like predictable en masse. So like we would try to predict what was happening. Well, where were the attacks going to be at in Iraq, in the next 24 or 48, 72 hours. I used to take that a little bit further and think on a few weeks ahead, which made me different, because I would see that we would react to something, and then they would react in response to that. So it was a feedback loop, but we were only focusing on the immediate, and so I could actually predict our behavior,
right?
Which made it really even more complicated, because trying to tell a military officer with 20 years of experience that he can be that his actions are predictable was very difficult, and that he was contributing to this feedback loop that was happening where and it was over it was there's a delayed reaction with human behavior. Whenever we would do something in Iraq, it would happen, the reaction to it wouldn't happen for 3 or 4 weeks. It would take time, but we were on this mindset of 24, 48, 72 hours. But anyway, the point is that it's not, the algorithms themselves are not unbiased. We put our biases in there when we write it. And we also feed it data that might be biased to begin with.
Well, it's biased because it reflects whatever what has happened.
Right.
So if you're in an unjust society, it reflects unjust, right?
Yeah, so when we collect data as, in statistics, we have to remember that statistics itself are not unbiased. I just look at predictive policing, for instance. If you're over-policing a neighborhood, you're going to have a whole lot of reporting in that. And if you feed that into an algorithm, it's going to predict a lot of criminal activity, whatever you want to call it, in a neighborhood. So you're going to focus more on it. So it's this feedback. That's the feedback loop.
So how do you break it? How do you teach? I think you believe that there's a way to teach a sense of ethics with coding.
Yes, absolutely.
How do you do that? How do you inscribe an ethical agenda on top of an algorithmic pursuit?
We as technologists and as developers, especially those of us that work on systems that affect millions of people, yes, I'm talking about the Twitter algorithms, the Google algorithms, as well as the Facebook, as well as predictive policing. But we have a responsibility to not only be aware of we need to be aware of the consequences of what we're making, because I've been in the hot seat before where I'm working on software and I will write something to meet a deadline or to meet the criteria that the demand that's set by somebody else. Upon high will say we need we need these features, we need this ability, we need to make so we have to be aware and take a step back and not just get caught up in the constant development process, but think about the ethic, think about the consequences of the systems that we're doing. And it's not just there's also dangers in writing software for one thing and expecting it to be only used for one thing.
Give an example of that.
Okay. This is more personal for me. I've worked with marketing data in the past, and I wrote predictive algorithms based on data for purchase histories, and trying to figure out where future customers might be and how to maintain loyalty of customers. I reused that knowledge to write the software that I wrote in Iraq. It was the same fields, the same statistics, the same algorithmic basis. Processing power was better, but it was not for marketing anymore. Right. It was to find people to kill. So I view it as marketing for death is kind of how I would call it. So yeah. The tools that we make because of the modularity and the ability to reuse code, we have to put in caveats on our code and take into account the fact that, when we write software for one purpose, we might be writing it for, a really nefarious purpose down the line. And the same with data collection. We might be collecting data that's for one purpose, but 20 years later, it's used for a completely different purpose.
So how would those checks and balances be put in, or how would you
we have to impose
regulate?
them.
So it has to be imposed.
Yeah, well, I mean, and I say that
as coders.
Yeah, as developers, we have to have and honestly, like doctors, doctors have a code of ethics. Software developers should have a code of ethics. We should have a sense of what our responsibilities are as software developers that transcend our bosses.
Who should lead that?
We should.
How are you going to do that?
Let's talk about it first. That's the first step of the process. And there are groups. Cade Crawford, Cade Crawford is somebody that I know at MIT who talks about this topic a lot. There's a couple other. There's a couple other AI projects that look at ethics at universities. So there's some groundwork going on, but don't wait for them to come up with a white paper to determine whether or not you have a code of ethics. Like, we should be doing this right now, every day. And yeah, whatever you're working on, think about what you're working on, what the implications of it are, and what the potential implications of it are. How can I think that developers have a responsibility to think about how their software can be misused as much as it can be used.
Particularly now, I think after the election and the hacking scandals and Facebook's possible complicity. I mean, it is a moment for people to think about the implications of technology on a large scale.
Right. Yeah, and that's going to be the norm. Unless we become more self-aware and more cognizant of the consequences of the systems that we build, because our systems are going to be exploited. They're going to be misused. Every piece of software can be misused. So it's about understanding that and trying to put a buffer to make it harder to misuse.
And you have talked a lot about your own sort of digital footprint. And how it affected your ability to get an apartment when you got out. It affected your ability to actually exist.
Yeah.
And
I was dead for 7 years,
yes,
according to the credit reporting agencies. So I'm quite alive, of course, but and also my name changed, so that completely screwed everything up, and my gender marker changed. So I couldn't get it, and whenever you leave prison, it's not like they hand you a driver's license and say, here's your photo ID. I didn't have anything.
Right.
So I when I got out of prison, I couldn't get an apartment. I actually had to crash with, basically I think a shell company owned the apartment that I was in for a while. So I crashed in Lower Manhattan, and I couldn't move anywhere because I didn't have any ID. I didn't have photo ID. I didn't have access to my bank accounts. I had bank accounts still, but there was no way that I could access them. I had to wait for my lawyers to give me an allowance from my own bank account to have cash in hand. Eventually, we got debit card. Eventually, we got proof of residence in Maryland. Eventually, we got the prerequisites to get a driver's license, to get a passport. I mean, a passport was a huge deal. And yeah, so it was a very difficult process to get through this, and it took several months. And also, we would go to the bank and we'd be like, "Hey, I'm me," and they'd be like, "No, you're not." And I'm how to prove? We had to prove to the bank, even though it was clear that the bank teller knew who I was.
You'd been on the cover of the New York Times Magazine and in Vogue, by the way.
Right. So, yeah. So talking about the fact that they already knew, the individuals knew who I was, but computer says no, was kind of the response that you would get through the bureaucratic system, because it's you need to prove with documentation that you are, in fact, the owner of this account, and that was difficult to get for a while, and it took several months, actually.
And with a lot of support. You had a lot of people, you had lawyers.
I did, and most people that you get out of prison, you don't have any of that.
You don't have any of that.
I mean, we're just throwing people out of prison and being like, hey, live your life now. And oh, by the way, now you have all these like additional restrictions on you, and people on parole especially, like they have to pay for, like they don't have a job, but they're expected to pay for like those like ankle bracelets that people get, like those aren't, the state doesn't pay for those. Those are like you
have to buy your ankle bracelet?
You have to buy your own, you have to rent your own, yeah, you have to. Like it's this convoluted, almost impossible process to like work through. And even with all the resources that I had and all the support that I had, it was hard.
Right.
But most of those problems have been dealt with now. So. And
can I ask now? So you come out and you interact with technologies that are information gathering technologies, with your smartphone in very restricted ways from. You're very careful about where your information goes and who could have access to it.
Right.
I'm wondering,
there's layers of security.
There's layers of security. There are many layers of security.
Yeah.
What would you advise everyone in this room or people watching? How do you protect your information? Like, what would you say? 3 things people could do to make sure that their involvement in information gathering is chosen, not surreptitious, as someone who knows this stuff well?
Well, I mean, I operate at paranoia. I mean, like paranoia levels.
We know that.
Security. That said, what I tell people and what I advise people the most is be self-aware of the information that you're putting out there. Like, there are moments where, yes, I turn on locational services to like get a lift,
right.
Or but like I turn it off. Like right. Being self-aware of when you're, revealing something about yourself, and when you're, and then like whenever it's no longer needed, being self-conscious enough to make it no longer available. Like that requires some level of self-awareness and discipline, and that's what I recommend to people is like be more self-aware of the digital footprint that you're leaving. Because I mean, and obviously, like we can't live you have to like reveal some bits of information, and I mean, it's gotten to the point where I have to turn on myself, like I have to hit the cell phone tower on my phone to like get a text message for like any time I do something, like because it's 2-factor
right.
authentication now with a lot of systems. So like you have to like, and everybody wants to know your phone number. So like turning over like your phone number, and getting a text message, like you're revealing, that whole process reveals an enormous amount of information about you, and where you are, what you're doing. The cell phone, like the credit card purchase. Being self-aware of the fact that all these steps, are giving you a footprint is, I think, the first step to protecting yourself. And if I think we did this across the board, it would be harder for these like large data sets and very dangerous data sets, because we, like advertising data is, the data that's collected for advertising is, I think, the most concerning to me, because we were like, okay, we're giving all this data, but I have nothing to hide. I'm not really worried about it. And advertisers are just like they're using it to like give, like those creepy ads where you like visit a website and then like you get
follows you around for
and you get that and you go to a different website and you get that ad that's like targeted to you. Like
why is that the creepiest of the?
That data can be misused by somebody
right.
else. Just imagine somebody who wants to misuse that data and how that can be misused. And it's going full circle again, like we were talking about before. Mm-hmm. Advertising data is a huge repository of data that can be bought by, sometimes anyone.
Right.
And you don't know what they're going to use it for, I remember there was this art exhibit by Trevor Paglen that I went to, and he had, it was these videos of people making facial gestures, and it was for facial recognition, like expressions, right. And it was done in the 90s, and you could tell it was done in the 90s because it was like it was totally like 1996 fashion, like the haircuts, the shirts, plaid was still in, so it was very grunge, and people turned over this information for one purpose, but it was that those videos were repurposed later to be a part of an art exhibit, and were being used to like show how the algorithms view the data. Like, it was actually showing as sort of an artistic way of like how the computer, of what the learning data is, and how the learning data is interpreted by the software. And now it's being used as an art exhibit. And none of those people consented to it being used in an art exhibit. And that was the point. The point was to show that, like, data that we give over by consent sometimes, we're not, like, we might be consenting that over for a completely different purpose in the long term, because it stays, it doesn't go away.
Now, meanwhile, on the other front, when you came out of prison, you also very actively went on social media, and you have a very active voice on Twitter and on Instagram. And on Twitter,
I don't put it on my phone, though. I want to.
You don't put it on your phone?
Yeah. So it's for my own health, really.
Right. Because
I mean, like, if and I've been caught up in like looking at my mentions, and like looking at my notifications. But I do that on a laptop, and like a secure laptop. So, but yeah.
Does it make you feel? What is it? I mean, there was a keynote yesterday by Sadiq Khan, the mayor of London, where he read out I don't know if any of you were there. He read out 6 tweets just from a day that he receives, which were very upsetting.
Yeah.
You get a lot of upsetting stuff, and you tend to attack it full on in a very optimistic way. But what's that like? Does it wear on you?
It's definitely tough. It's hard. It does. That's why I try not to look at it, because like, I've been caught up in it once or twice, where I'm like, like, there's this constant stream of anger, of like, like nastiness. But it's not. It's not really something that impacts my daily life. So I need to like put that aside and not worry about it. But it's hard to do that. And there have been moments where I've like had to deal with that. And
why did you think it was important to be on social media when you came out?
I wanted people to not. I'm not afraid of being a former prisoner. I'm not afraid of being a trans person. I'm not afraid of being who I am and saying this is why I did what happened, and I'm going to continue to do things. So it was really an act of defiance, because everybody that I talked to was worried that I would kind of take a step back. And I've had friends who have told me, like, hey, it would. If you took a step back, we wouldn't blame you for it. Like, if you would just rest and recuperate. But I didn't want to do that. And I don't want to do that, even though I am dealing with that, and it is hard. It is not easy. And I've been dealing with the after effects of being in prison at the same time as like learning how to adapt to this social media environment and being a public figure all at the same time. So like, I'm already dealing with anxiety and depression and a lot of therapy from my experiences. And honestly, I've heard the word complex PTSD. So like, dealing with these things on top of everything else has been hard, but it's also manageable, especially whenever I have people around me that can help me and can tell me whenever I'm getting caught up in it, because I can't always see whenever I'm spiraling, because I get into these like I get into this like anxious spiral of like, oh my goodness, like everything's falling apart. I can't deal with this. I'm not able to cope with this, but I can, and I just need somebody to pat me on the back and say, hey, look, and you often have to be reminded of my own motto, which is "We got this." Mm-hmm. Like, I have to be reminded of this from my friends, because like, and people and it was the same in prison. Like, people would have to remind me, like, calm down, like, you know, like you can deal with this. It's hard, it's not easy, and it is a struggle, and it's a struggle that I'm not afraid to talk about.
Have you been able to like find time for a private or personal or intimate life?
Not really.
Okay, priority one this year after the election, maybe? What do you think?
I don't know. Problem is I don't feel safe. Mm-hmm. Like, I don't feel this sense of security and safety and comfort in my own apartment. I feel embattled. I feel like and I also feel this like responsibility to people that I care about, especially my friends, because, you know, they're struggling with the same problems, and we're all dealing with, you know, with a hostile political environment, and we didn't really, you know, we just like, I walked in and I'm like learning how to,
and I feel a responsibility to be a part of that, because I don't have anywhere to hide. I don't have anywhere to go to. I'm cornered here.
Well, you are the most probably visible member of a kind of, I guess, if I character community.
No, there's a couple of people who are wrong, I think. Well, I mean, visible to the public at large. Yeah, I would say that. I mean, I'm certainly out and about, which some people are in exile or and not able to be among everybody, I guess. And also there's a lot, you know, and I have crypto friends who are out there, like, who don't have a footprint, but they're like well known in the crypto community. So.
Do you find in that community, do you find comfort and stability there, or is
comfort and stability in math?
In math.
When I'm dealing with like anxiety and I'm dealing with like a lot of depression, sometimes I just go to a computer and just start coding. And it makes me feel better because it's something I manage, it's an environment in which I can work in, and I don't have to deal with all these other extraneous things. So it's comforting to me to be able to like learn Rust and to be able to like, you know, work with TensorFlow and to work on these like complicated things and like problem solve, because it's like, why are you not working, and why am I getting these errors? Like, you know, like debugging something is actually very, I mean, it's frustrating on like a superficial level, but in the longer term, I think it's more comforting for me. But
and do you find in the securities work you do now, and the work that you do, can you pick and choose and find projects where does the work that you're doing also bring you a level of it's not just calming in the sort of poetry of math, but it's actually because you're doing something you believe in, that you're coding in a way that you, and writing code for something that you care about.
Yeah, and debugging code for something you care about too. Because you know, and what I've been most of the projects that I've been working on lately have actually been unfinished projects that somebody else started, and then I'm like merging with another unfinished project to like do a task that's more generalized. I haven't had a whole lot of time to work on these things, but I've been contributing, and you know, like I don't know if anybody's going to be able to find my secret GitHub, but yeah, like I've been working on projects, but you know, and there's a couple projects that are more for me and like my understanding, but I'm also contributing to the bigger picture. You know, and it's a lot. I'm mostly doing crypto. It's what I'm familiar with. It makes, you know, I've been playing around with a tool called TensorFlow as well, which does a lot of, it has a lot of like AI capabilities, but it's also not as fun for me, because I'm more like, I want to like, I like crypto, and I like breaking, like I also like and you know, like that, I have a lot of virtual machine environments where I do this, and it's completely closed off, or I'll like sign a contract or something. Like, liability. Like you don't want to, you know, you don't want to like cross over any boundaries. But yeah, I enjoy that stuff.
Yep.
That's my hobby.
That's what that's what I expect from you. I've always found that interesting. I think that for a lot of people in the general public, that when you came out, they thought that your primary focus or your primary identification would be in the trans community, because that was the most visible signifier to the world of who you were and what had changed and different. To me, it's always been that your participation in the crypto community or the hack community is very fundamental to who you are, and that the issues around there, which often mirror or even predict the issues we're going to see in the larger culture with Me Too, and they hit that world first, and you've been. Am I wrong?
I certainly had a moment. It was actually June of last year where I had been surrounded by my lawyers, and obviously I was like kind of trapped in my apartment and in the like downtown Manhattan area because I couldn't travel. I didn't have ID yet. And so I'd been talking to lawyers, I'd been talking to reporters, it had been a lot of the like coming out of prison logistics and celebrity and interviews and photos, and it was really draining on me. So I actually had a friend of mine come out from San Francisco, and and they're a prominent cryptographer, and they came to my apartment, and I'm just like, thank goodness you're here. And it was really a moment of like, okay, like and they're like, yeah, like here's the projects I'm working on. And I'm just like, all right, like I want to do stuff too.
Hack into something.
Yeah, like we were sitting there with our computer, and I was like, I don't have a computer yet. Because I was like, I was worried about going to like a store and just buying a computer, or like because I couldn't do it. Like I had to like get permission to do it, through like the lawyers and like this whole like process, Like, and I didn't want to So like it was hard to like hard to get a computer. But like on this day in June, and it was like a hot summer day, and we weaved around Manhattan to like find the computer that would run the software that we wanted to run on it. And we like paid cash, and we were like, okay, it's not that one, not that one, not that one, out of like a row of the same thing, but like we'd pick it randomly to make sure it wasn't like the one on the top, and we finally found that, and we're like loaded up, and we got it set. Like getting my laptop set up was just my quality of life from my perspective like jumped, because I'm like, okay, now I can do stuff, and like, okay, now I've got turn on virtualization and turn on all the tools, and yeah, it was really like pivotal moment in sort of me reconnecting with everybody and me being more a part of something that I'm more that I'm more familiar with and understand really well.
And that nurtures you.
Yeah, it does. And it's really important. This is important stuff, and we all talk about the same issues. And I'm more of a public face on these, so a lot of this stuff, a lot of the things that I talk about, I have a community of people. We have a community of people that are talking about this stuff, but they don't have nearly the same voice, and they are just as much a part of this as I am, and I depend on them to like fill in my gaps in certain areas. So.
I think you need some crypto roommates.
Yeah, I've been working on it. It's hard to drag people. It's hard to drag people from like San Francisco
to Maryland.
Yeah. I mean, like they're in. Oakland is. It's Oakland and San Francisco, and
they have good quality of life.
Got a couple friends in Palo Alto. So.
Okay, so
questions.
A few questions.
Yep.
Well, okay. From your perspective, this is from GeoFile. From your perspective as an expert on network security, what do you see as the greatest threats to our democracy, freedom, and privacy? In 10 words or less.
Our complacency is what's dangerous. Our complacency about, it's not awareness anymore. People know. People have known for at least 5 years now, like that surveillance is bad and that it's happening on a large scale and it's being used in these ways, and it's a threat to, it's a threat to everything. It's a threat to everybody. we know this. We know it's a problem. But I think everybody's like expecting somebody else to do something about it. And we can't wait for somebody else to come along and say, oh, here's the solution. We're going to fix it now. Nobody's going to do that. In fact, there's every incentive not to do that. You know, like Google has no incentive on doing that. Like Facebook has no incentive on doing that. The government has no incentive on doing that. Like we as we as a collective unit, as people, have an incentive to protect ourselves against this, but we have to deal with all these institutions of power, and we need to push back, and I mean like really push back on all of this, because we like and you know, like people, I've been asked like, oh, is there a tipping point for this? And it's like, well, yeah, that was like a while ago. Like we need to like you know, it's not the slippery slope anymore. It's more like the cliff.
Well, it mirrors global warming. I mean, hello, same, right?
Yeah, no kidding.
Yeah, so I had that.
Yeah, the crisis. We're already in crisis.
We're there. The iceberg is melting. It's there. Yeah.
So yeah, that's the biggest threat is definitely our complacency. I'm really disappointed. You know, I'm disappointed in people because I mean we like to say that we value these things, and you know, whenever push comes to shove, it's like, okay, you can have it.
But Chelsea, you're 30. Like this is your moment. You got to like.
Yeah,
there's so much more time to go. You know.
Yeah.
Okay, so what do you think about current issues with transgender people that identify themselves as women but are placed in male prisons and vice versa?
Oh, it's
anonymous.
It's awful. I mean, it's happening everywhere. It's happening in every, you know, and very few counties have adopted different policies. And honestly, you know, like I'm not trying to make it like, oh, we should make, you know, prisons better for trans people. We should just get trans people out of prisons. Like they're just let's not try to make better prisons. And I've you know, like let's build more women prisons. Like let's get these people out of there. But yeah, that's how I feel about it. Is more like, I mean, I feel like the discussion in more mainstream media has been on this issue, and it's, you know, I'm glad that there's awareness about it. I'm glad that people are now talking about it, but yeah, it's definitely been concerning to see people like discussing it in terms of like, you know, reinforcing the system that placed a trans woman in danger and in a hazardous environment in the first place. Let's pull people out. Let's take people out. Let's not.
But you don't want there to be trans prisons.
Absolutely not. No, that's a terrible idea. We don't need more prisons. We need less prisons.
Fewer prisons.
Less prisons.
So the personal transformation, this is from another anonymous. The personal transformation you've completed is very inspiring. Is there any advice you could share with people who want to change their career or lifestyle?
Do it. Just do it. I mean, I jump right, you know, every single time I do something, I just jump right into it. I mean, obviously.
You jumped right into the military, though. You've jumped into some interesting places.
Yeah, I jumped in the military. I mean, like literally, that was a 6-day process. So, and you know, it's funny because like they in 2007 they actually lifted the delayed entry program, which is a sort of 40-day window in which you kind of think about it. Like you sign up and then you're like given 40 days to like actually show up, but like I waived that to like get a bigger bonus, so like it was a shorter turnaround.
You're nothing if not decisive, but
yeah, but I mean, I've had my friends like literally grab me and be like, you need to slow down. You're about to do, you know, like I'm pretty. I get in. I jump into things, and like I need to slow. I realize now that I'm getting older, I need to slow down. Me jumping into things and deciding on doing things and being decisive about things can get, you know, it can get me into hot water at times, and you know, it has obviously put me in hot water in the past, to say the least.
You think?
But you know, like I do, I just do stuff. Like,
but you don't regret any of those. Do you?
I mean, yeah. There's a few things I regret, but they're less. They're more like personal to me. I regret, you know, like there's moments where I like second guess like whether or not I should have, you know. And it sounds crazy, like should I have left Starbucks? You know, like what would life have been like if I hadn't enlisted in the military and stayed at Starbucks and finished my college degree? Where would I be? Where would the world be? And like, it's not constructive to do this, which is one of the reasons why I try not to. But you know, and I have made mistakes in the past. You know, I've made numerous mistakes. I'm not perfect. I've made tons of mistakes in the past, but I can't dwell on that.
But you don't think you don't think the data dump was a mistake?
Oh, no. I mean, like it wasn't about being a mistake so much as it is like I made a decision to do something, and I made that decision. I'm owning that decision. It's not whenever it comes to something like that. It's not about like second guessing it or regretting it. It's about owning it, because you know, like there is no way I can go back and change the like nuanced, like little tiny things here and there that, you know, like people ask me a lot of questions about like would you do something different? It's like I couldn't do anything differently. Like I was placed in the hot seat. I had to make decisions in a short period of time. I did them the best that I could, given the information that I had, and I made a decision, and I'm owning that decision. So that's all I can do. Is I own decisions, and you know, like it's kind of a military like mindset that you get into, where it's like you know. It's a very fast-paced environment, and you're having to make like really intense decisions, and you don't have time to like ruminate about the decision that you made a week ago, because
it's done.
You know, yeah,
the person's dead.
Yeah, so you're, you know, like, and that's kind of how I am with this. Is like now I'm like more focused on like what's happening in 2018 than I am with what happened in 2010. Like I'm deeply embroiled in everything that's going on right now. I mean, this is not about. This is not like I'm not here to, you know, I'm not here today. I mean, I almost said tonight, but it's like I'm barely awake at all. I struggled to get up because I went out last night. So I'm sure that, you know, as you can see, people are crawling in still. So it's whew, I'm not a morning person. I'm usually waking up in about 40 minutes. So. So yeah, but you know, like I'm not out here as a public face because this is a career.
Right.
This isn't my job. This is for me. This is a matter of survival for, you know, and you know, it's kind of, you know, there's kind of a bit of a selfish, you know, aspect to it, because, you know, I am worried about my own future and my own safety in this environment, this political environment. You know, where am I going to, you know, whenever people are telling me that I should, you know, that are, you know, whenever they're constantly like tweeting at me like, oh, you're a traitor, you should die, like, you know, like that, you know, or like you're not a real, you know, you're really a man, you know, like, you know, like you need to shave, you know, whenever I'm getting like all these like statements constantly, you know, like it makes me second guess, you know, whether or not I'm really safe in the world, and I can't let that stop me from being out here, okay, and being, you know, and doing this. Next question.
I think
that's the same question.
It's the same question.
Yeah.
New questions? We have many of the same questions here.
Yeah, can we get another? Oh, yeah, there we go.
These are, well, I think people are asking, well, okay. The question is from GFL, do you have any advice for Ed Snowden? Is there any hope for him being pardoned?
Yeah, I mean, I don't have advice. I mean, it's a completely different set of circumstances in a situation. You know, it's something I never considered. You know, like it was decisions that I never really considered. I mean, it was a different time, different environment, different tools were available. I don't have advice.
Have you been in contact with him?
Through lawyers. I mean,
right.
It's not the same thing. There's all kinds of weird legal stuff that happens around him. So I have been. And honestly, like I haven't really been focused on 2013, you know, in the same way as I've been thinking about 2010. Right. Like people ask me a lot about 2010. Like you know, that happened in 2013. From what I understand, like it's fairly comfortable. So I don't think that it's nearly as. I mean, like obviously he wants to come back, but And I'm supportive of that. He should be able to come back. This is his home, and safely at that. And I mean, the notion of him getting a fair trial is just outrageous. That's a ridiculous notion. I mean, you know, anybody who looks at my case and like, I mean, can you blame anybody for making a decision like that?
Can I ask, if someone, what would you say to someone now who who was in your position, who in an organization or in a governmental organization, right, saw profound injustice, saw profound oppression, saw something that was very and wanted to bring attention? How do you advise people to do that, to take that activist gesture now? What would you say?
I'm going to make this more general and broader than just in that situation. Mm-hmm. If you see something that if you see something and you see the opportunity to do something about it, you can do something. You know, like, you're in a better position. I mean, like, every situation is different. Every different set of circumstances is going to be completely different. And you have to make a decision based on those circumstances. But I view what I did in my situation as being a form of direct action, mm-hmm, more so than just like, oh, it's an act of whistleblowing.
And you believe in direct action?
I do. You can, as an individual, in a heated situation, do something about it. You have to deal with the consequences of that, because it's messy. It is messy, but I do tell people that it is valid to do something on your own. It is valid to go out and engage in direct action, and it is valid to have your political agency beyond the system, beyond, you know, going and voting in a ballot box or anything like that. So we can do things, you know, as individuals, and we do have agency, and everybody needs to make their own decision. And like, ask yourself, is it better to not make a decision? Because that's where I came from in making my decision. Was it was less about whether or not I should make this decision, but about whether or not, because I'm responsible if I don't make a decision too. Mm-hmm. I've got that on I would have that on my conscience for the rest of my life. I could have done something, why didn't I do it? And that weighed on me far more than the alternative.
And on that, I think we've just gone out of time. Like, we're about to be buzzed. Thank you, Chelsea. That's it. Thank you.